You know, real quickly, I want to just go through, you know, what we see for fertilizer 18, and what you're looking at right now is the fertilizer demand outlook. Now, this is the outlook that actually we had going into spring. This is sort of the baseline forecast, and you can see that we were pretty much expecting a decline primarily because of the drop in corn acres, offset by a little bit of increase in cotton and some other adjustments, but basically down 1% for nitrogen and down roughly 2% for P and K. Now, when you look from the standpoint of nitrogen and you look at the baseline projection for what we were forecasting on a by-product basis, you can see originally when we were going into the spring season, we were anticipating a 2.2% increase in 18, primarily because of, if you remember last spring, that was not a good spring season for ammonia. And so we were expecting on an annualized basis, which this is, includes both fall and spring, a little bit of a recovery in ammonia back to normal, and then most of that coming out of urea, and then a little bit of an increase in UAN. The problem is that was the baseline, and that was before what we saw happening with the weather issues. And as you can see, that March in the U.S., this is USDA data, and the March, they don't publish March data, but if you looked at March and April, pretty much all of the eastern Corn Belt and most of Iowa and Minnesota and the northern tier states, I mean, they didn't even get in the field until we started getting into the first week in May. And this is particularly true from I-80 north in Iowa and going through southern Minnesota into Wisconsin, then over into the eastern Corn Belt. And you can see that 4-week total in April, you know, the percentage number there is the percent of available days. And you can see particularly in the upper Midwest, when you got into Minnesota, only 1%. I mean, they didn't get in the field at all until we got into May. So that really had a big impact on nitrogen now, or on ammonia in particular. And so this is what we're estimating, and we went through almost on a county-by-county basis and looked at, you know, what the weather conditions were, how many suitable days there were for field work, and then tried to come up with an estimate. And I don't even want to call it an estimate. This is our best guess right now. You can see the March forecast, the spring, when you split it out between fall and spring. You know, we were expecting 2134, and based on the weather factoring in, it looks like that we lost somewhere around 340,000 tons of ammonia that just couldn't get applied because of the wet conditions. And again, most of that was along that Iowa-Minnesota border and the Wisconsin, and then in the eastern Corn Belt, you know, a little bit into Michigan, mostly in Ohio, but then also in the southern part of Illinois and Indiana. Looks like we also lost some there.